operating under a regulation that was put together during the Clinton administration and does not provide for the publication of the report. But I am relying on my own discretion to make as much public as I can.
Well, that's exactly what Democrats are concerned about. Many of them say the Attorney General William Barr is a political appointee who has been critical of portions of the Mueller probe. Barr, he testified before the House Appropriations Committee today, and this exchange between Barr and the chair of the committee, Congresswoman Nita Lowey of New York, who was on a program last week, is perhaps getting the most headlines.
Did the White House see the report before you released your summarizing letter? Has the White House seen it since then? Have they been briefed on the contents beyond what was in your summarizing letter to the Judiciary Committee?
I've said what I'm going to say about the report today. I've issued 3 letters about it, and I was willing to discuss the historic information of how the report came to me and my decision on Sunday. But I've already laid out the process that is going forward to release these reports, hopefully within a week, and I'm not going to say anything more about it.
So with that, right after Barr said he'd only release a redacted version of the report, then Jerry Nadler, he threatened to subpoena the entire thing. The New York Democrat is head of the House Judiciary Committee. And joining me now to discuss this and more, Harry Lippmann, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General appointed by President Clinton and also former federal prosecutor. Harry, with what wasn't said by Barr under direct questioning by Congresswoman Lowey, I think you could read it a couple ways in terms of whether or not to release the report. He does have the option, if he wanted to, he could release the report. He's choosing not to. His choice not to, do you believe that it was always baked in? Or there's some saying, since he before said that he'd like to release the report, he was all about transparency. The president said he wanted the report going out. Rudy Giuliani said he wanted the whole report out there. I can go on. That only after they read through the 400 pages did they say, we don't want a lot of this stuff out here. We're going to take a different tact. Was this the plan all along, or did the contents of the report maybe change their minds as it relates to how much we'll get to see?
You know, I'm not sure, Richard, that he could or that he thinks he could. He's all the time said transparency to the limits of the law, and he doesn't have the power. The Attorney General can't simply release and say ignore grand jury material. And the one of the categories seems a little bit iffy, the final one about third parties. But I think he sees these as legal requirements, and he's hewing to the regulations. And that, I think, is the signal we always got. Now, obviously, when he talks about his own discretion, he thinks that even within those regulations and laws, there's room for him to provide more or less, and he has asserted anyway, or pledged, it will be more. But I don't think it's in his prerogative, as he sees it, to just flout the law and give over, especially grand jury information.
Fair enough, but Harry, if he was just calling balls and strikes, I don't think we would have gotten the reaction we did from some members of the Mueller team per the Times and the Post report, who said that the spin that Barr put out there, particularly as it relates to obstruction, wasn't reflective of the work product, that he was giving his own version that they don't believe, the 400 pages indicated.
Yeah, so this is a really good and important point, and the best thing I can say is it'll be illuminated a week from today. But look, I agree. If Mueller came in and really wanted to not bottom line, and Barr took it upon himself for some reason, perhaps because he'll argue the regulations required it to bottom line, that's a problem. And that is the big problem. If you take that out of the equation, it's a little bit like aside from that, how did you like to play Mrs. Lincoln? But if you take that out of the equation, he might seem like he's being sort of neutral and expeditious. But this is the answer we have to find out about. I think there's a good shot we will next week, because a lot of what's involved in Mueller's obstruction determinations doesn't fit those categories. We at least ought to know where Mueller was and why he decided to do it this way when even the redacted report comes out.
Now, how did you take it by the non-answer that Mr. Barr gave as to whether or not he had shown beforehand or even talked post-fact with the White House about the contents of the report? I was under the impression that he and he alone had gone through the report. Was that naive of me, or do you believe that we could potentially be getting a different story and the White House will maybe have been given a head start?
Yeah, no, so that was my impression as well, and he's been pretty hands-off. He says they're not going to do executive privilege, he'll do it, but he doesn't see anything to be done. There is another read. Again, we'll know in a week. But I think he came in with stage direction saying, I'm going to give him a little, and then shut it down. And it's more or less so happened at Representative Lowry's question that that's where he decided to pull the trigger. So I didn't necessarily take it as particularly portentous on the White House sharing point. And if I had to guess, I would guess with you that in fact it has not been shared. Again, we'll find out in a week though. Well, actually, on that one, maybe we'll find out sooner.
How about the obstruction question you got today, which was point blank? The president said, of course, that he was completely exonerated by the report, when even the top line of what Mueller said was to the contrary, that he wasn't making a final call on it, but he wouldn't, per his report, clear the president or his handlers of obstruction. Barr wouldn't even go there. Were you surprised at all by that or not?
What Barr said is, I don't want to start down that road until we have the whole report in front of us. That part struck me as a kind of a reasonable, kind of rule of the road for discussion. And I didn't take it to be any kind of assertion that, that Trump was telling the truth. Barr is not stupid. I think he's aware that Trump lies daily. It's a given fact, but now how does he incorporate that into his legal obligations?
Jerry Nadler, as we showed, he said, okay, I'm going to now subpoena the whole report. How does the law look at this? At the end of the day, who's more likely to win here? Congress with the subpoena to get the full unredacted report here, or the discretion of Barr as to decide who gets to see what?
Boy, is this tough. And while Nadler talks tough, he really wants to get Barr's cooperation. He wants Barr to give a liberal that is to say, to not redact too much in the first instance, because here's what's going to happen. If the sides actually square off and go to court, and DOJ is taking the position that they have fully redacted, a court is going to have to go through this and determine whether or not it's grand jury material, which is a sort of amorphous standard. Piece by piece, retail by retail, it will be months, years, and the problem is, as has happened in the past, even if Congress by and large prevails, the wind has gone out of the sails because so much time has happened. In that sense, it really is advantage DOJ if there's this kind of fight. And I think what they really want to see from Barr, and it didn't look to me like they were going to be getting it based on today, is some cooperative process where the great bulk of it is released. Just one more point, though. Again, we'll know in a week. On the obstruction, which matters the most now, why did Mueller not want a bottom line? Why did Barr bottom line? My best guess is that Mueller investigated that not so much in the grand jury, but more in interviews and other ways. That material really ought to come out.
We talk about these people as if, they're basically statues with moving lips, but at the end, William Barr, we're not talking Whitaker here, he's got something to lose. He has a career in this, a reputation, and a pretty seemingly well-earned one. From what I've gathered, and you can put more to this, he's got a really healthy ego, but he does care on how he'll be remembered, and this will be in the first chapters of his obit. To that end, he's not going to put everything of his entire career to go to war for the president here if he thinks at the end of the day we're going to hear from Mueller, we're going to see the report, we're going to see the findings. One would think that there's a line that Barr wouldn't cross. Is that a fair synopsis?
You know, I really think so. It was one of the reasons I was sort of sanguine about Barr as opposed to, a weak sort of operative like Whitaker or like Sessions. He is an institutionalist, and you're totally right. He's got everything to lose here in terms of his own legacy. He's 68 years old, and if the battle lines, by the way, are Barr versus Mueller, especially he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of that. Now, he may feel in a quandary sometimes about certain legal obligations, and to me, the worst case scenario is if his judgment is based on very extreme views of executive power, and those are his views. But I would be really surprised if he is wanting to carry water or be a toady for Trump, and even if he wanted somehow to do it for party, it doesn't fit with his motivations exactly as you say. Not to say that means everything's going to come out, but he doesn't want to go down as the guy who kept it open, especially because I think anyone with any smarts here knows it's coming out. Maybe it comes out in 2 years, maybe 4 years. But when that happens, if it looks like Barr has loaded the dice, his legacy is irretrievably tarnished.
Harry Lippmann, as always, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure, Richard.
And up next, the shakeup at the Homeland Security Department, it continues. That as the president ratchets up his immigration crackdown. Congressman Peter King, he'll join us after the break, the New York Republican. He's a member of the Homeland Security Committee, so I'll have a lot of insight into what's going on.